bad
They got it
math. Like they did the
wrong.
math wrong.
They did the math wrong. Instead of 0.25, they used 0.9, and they just made it up. I'm not sure why we're supposed to trust Donald Trump and his co-felon, by the way, Peter Navarro, who just got out of jail, right? Who's now back in the White House. Why we're supposed to trust them to handle the economy.
Hey, Jamal. How are you?
I'm good. Happy, I don't even want to call it post-liberation week because that feels like it dignifies the ridiculous shit that we're in the middle of. We're on a podcast, right? So we can say ridiculous shit when we need to.
What did we get liberated from is really what I'm questioning, because we have deficits because we bought things from other countries and we liked the cheap stuff that we're buying. This is why Americans get a lot of cheap things. We buy them, and
Shirts,
other people,
iPhones, toys, all of it.
Yeah, other countries liked that relationship. So I'm like, this is something we all kind of wanted. So Vietnam, for example, where they have all of these great microchips that we want for our cars, was willing to do a zero tariff deal. But President Trump's economic advisor, Peter Navarro, said there's no negotiation here. There's no need to negotiate anything. This is a national emergency. And so they take this formula that no economist recognizes, and that actually is applied wrong. So not only bad
right, it's
economics,
even worse, right?
Yeah, bad math. Like they did the math wrong.
The math wrong. Instead of 0.25, they used 0.9, and they just made it up. I mean, when you've got AEI, the conservative organization, American Enterprise Institute, when you've got them coming out and saying, this is ridiculous. You've got these big, huge private banks doing calls and telling people, this is ridiculous. This is not right. It's not going to work. I'm not sure why we're supposed to trust Donald Trump and his co-felon, by the way, Peter Navarro, who just got out of jail, right? Who's now back in the White House. Why we're supposed to trust them to handle the economy.
Yeah, maybe having convicted felons running our country isn't a great idea, seeing as how these two in particular really don't care about rule of law or how systems should or shouldn't work or any of the rules. And I'm all about a little disruption. Let's change things up, right? Clearly, we have to adapt to change and modernize. But, what they're talking about doing is not change and modernizing. They're talking about going back to an economic era from the 1900s when all of America's funding, everything we had came from tariffs, and there was zero income tax, which also was at a time when we had zero public schools, zero public infrastructure, zero children who were educated. Children were doing child labor, people were enslaved, like all of these things. I'm like,
we had enforced apartheid through the Jim Crow segregation rules in the South. Women couldn't vote, nor could they have any economic power outside of their family budgets if their husbands so allowed them to have that kind of economic power. So half the workforce wasn't, half the women weren't able, half the population wasn't able to participate. The other part of the population, the people of color who were here, who might have been able to participate, but only in designated roles. So what happens? You have a small section of the country, let's call it 35-40% of the country, the white guys who were in the country, who basically got all the, back in the 1870s to 1900s.
But in the 1870s, remember, it was the ones who could own land. It wasn't even the white workers, right? White workers weren't getting anything. They also had families in sweatshops and kids who weren't going to school.
It's true. So, I mean, and they want to go back to a time where America wasn't really that great for the vast majority of Americans, like the vast majority of Americans. And so the idea that we had great innovation and there was so much money, we didn't know what to do with it, which is what the president said yesterday. Also what Howard Lutnick has been saying since last October. If we're going back to that era where all the billionaires get to make all the decisions, you know what happened? How America got great? We stopped that.
Yeah.
Starting with Teddy Roosevelt and trusting, bus trusting, going to all those liberal, rules. Women got the right to vote. We started having labor rules. We started getting, we got rid of all the bad stuff. Anyway, you know what it is. We could rant about this.
We're recapping for everybody, right? That this is what the people in charge right now want. So when you say this is crazy, this is ridiculous, the impact is crazy and ridiculous, but there is a very specific intent behind it. What I find fascinating about this moment, though, is you're now seeing Elon Musk speaking out against President Trump's policies because he has a whole ton of business in China. China's unhappy about the tariffs. And so Elon Musk is saying that this is not right. Jamie Dimon over there on Wall Street, he's saying that this isn't right. So these folks who, even the owner of Barstool Sports, right? All of these bros who were like, you know what? if Trump does bad things to other people, that's fine because he's going to be great for the economy. So much for that argument.
Yeah, listen, I think that what Elon Musk believed, which is it's like this happens every single time. It's like Lucy in the football. These people believe that if they just sidle up next to Donald Trump, they go along with a little bit of the crazy, that when he acts a complete crazy, they're going to be the ones who are going to be next to him to like steer him back, get the ship back on the water and
Mm-hmm.
off the rocks. And it never works. It never
Mm-hmm.
works because Donald Trump uses you up until he doesn't need you anymore. Thank you very much. Send you out, bring in the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone's just a bunch of goons.
Yeah, and he has just a bunch of different extremists in his orbit, and each of them gets to do the piece of the puzzle that they want to tinker with, how they want to reshape American society. And now those extremists aren't getting along. So that's going to be interesting to see, right? Peter
Right. Right.
Navarro versus Elon Musk versus Laura
When they
Loomer.
call him like a dumb
Where'd
as a
she show
sack
up
of
from?
rocks, they call him dumb as a sack of rocks. Elon Musk called Peter Navarro on Twitter. It's really pretty amazing. And
And
also,
Trump
this
likes
is
to see, he likes to see his people fighting it out for his attention.
yes, that's what I was going. They're going to do this in public. Listen, we've all been a part of political organizations, governments, Congress, whatever. Everybody has
There's members
fights.
who
They're
do
all
this,
kind
right?
of
That
like,
like,
yeah, they're all kind of stuff. But these guys are out on public airwaves arguing with each other like
mhm,
they're in a high school fraternity or college fraternity.
mhm, mhm. I think honestly the folks in college fraternities have more emotional intelligence about how to handle this, right? Like they have leadership, they try to negotiate and discuss. And I can't believe I'm defending fraternity bros,
I
but
was gonna say
that's what
I'm
it
gonna
sounds like.
I'm gonna document this
Like I'm
for
like
all the people.
that it's on the spectrum of
Yes.
what's happening right now, right? That there's that they get scared of when the university steps in and has something to say. Like they actually care about authority and leadership. But these guys, it's just it's I don't know when it's going to implode because really Congress has rolled over. So we only have this next election to have some kind of check on their power. But just understand, I want everybody, all of our listeners to understand that they're not working as a team at all. And that they're actually each going to do separately bad things to different parts of American society.
Correct.
And Trump likes that. Right. He likes that
Yeah,
kind of competition. And that is the most toxic personality that you could have now running the country.
absolutely true. And we're going to have a great guest who's joining us soon, who's
Mhm.
going to give us a big, broad scopes of what's happening and how this looks around the world. Great government official. But, I was surprised, not surprised. I was also watching this week the foreign leaders who are now
Mhm.
starting to do basically what Donald Trump wants, which is to come and bend the knee, come and kiss the ring, and then see what kind of goodies they can get. Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel was here, and he was asking, telling Trump they're going to do what they can to eliminate the trade surplus, and they're going to do all the things that Trump wants. And Trump didn't really promise him anything, which was kind of amazing. He just said, "We'll get back to you." Fundamentally, we got Giorgia Meloni from Italy, who is also trying to get next to her friend and figure out what they can do Italy to soften the blows. These foreign governments are really coming to do what exactly Trump wants, which is come and
Mhm.
kiss the ring or kiss something else if you can.
Trump has managed to do something I really didn't think was possible in the modern era. He had three Asian countries that have history of
Mm,
invasion, of colonization, of rape of people of all across. Right, like he managed to get China, Japan, and South Korea to come to economic discussions when it used to be the United States was the player, right?
that's
The
right.
United States had a military base and has a military base in Japan. The United States has these trade deals with South Korea. This is how we have access to the South China Sea. All of this was about the United States having access to Asian markets and being a reliable security partner, yada, yada. And now we have gotten our allies and their enemy together because we are now the common enemy. We're the biggest threat
That's right.
to
And if
Asian countries and their economic livelihood when, let's be clear, none of these tariffs are going to solve for the fact that we like and need a bunch of stuff cheaply from these countries.
right. And for those who may not have been up on their pre-World War II or World War II Asian history, Japan invaded Korea
Mhm.
and dominated South Korea and basically treated the South Koreans much the way kind of white Americans treated black people. They wouldn't allow them to use their language. They took over their buildings and turned them into like their emperor's
Mhm.
house and turned it into kind of a rote government office. Like turned it, it's like taking over the White House and turning it into a post office,
Yeah,
right? Like that's
women,
basically
South
what they
Korean
did.
women were forced to
They were forced,
service
right? Women were forced into
Japanese
sexual
military
service.
men. Mhm.
Yep. So all of that was happening. And so even in peacetime with the United States as a broker, South Korea and Japanese, they don't really fuck with each other that much. Sorry. But they don't really like deal with each other that much. They kind of don't really like it. But they'll do it because that's the world order that the United States had established. And they
Yep.
recognize some mutual security worked for both of them against people like China.
Mhm.
But now
Yeah,
we're the ones that are out, and
yep,
China's the one that's getting it.
yep. All for what? For bad math formulas.
Right.
Right.
Uh,
It's like like you've said this before, Jamal. It's just the poor execution is probably what's going to undo everything, and make it fail faster. It's
yeah.
just Trump doesn't seem to care that there's going, as he said, there's going to be a lot of pain before the medicine comes. And just the medicine ain't coming, folks. This is an anti-science, anti belief in medicine administration. They're like, here, take some ivermectin for your tariff problems.
And
Oh,
it's
I'm
interesting.
sorry. Did the cost of goods go up $3,000 on average? Is the average cost of a home up $250,000? Take some vitamin A. You'll be good. That's the
Right.
logic.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know the
You actually
vitamin A
don't need any
references to the
vaccines.
fact that
Yes.
they're talking about
Yep.
vitamin A and measles. Don't take, measles vaccine, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., will go down for a funeral of the second or another child who died of measles, a completely preventable disease, but will not say you should all get your vaccines. Won't say
Right.
that. And so
The Secretary
vitamin
of
A is the rumor of what is effective in this moment.
the Secretary of Health and Human Services is also now standing up. We're going to go a little bit off field, but this is a personal thing too. The Secretary of Health and Human Services is now standing up and saying that fluoride in the water is not something that the United States should be advocating for people to have. Now, one of the reasons we have fluoride in water is because it helps make you have better teeth and strong bones. And Americans used to have crappy teeth, and now you
Mm-hmm.
go around the world and we're the teeth envy of the world, right? People love American teeth. But he wants to get rid
Why
of
do we need good
fluoride in the
teeth and
water.
gums, Jamal? I wonder why.
Right, exactly. But the analysis of this, I live in a place where people don't have fluoride in the water. There's no
Mhm.
fluoride in the water in our community. So what happens is our doctor prescribes fluoride based vitamins for our kids. So our kids take vitamins every day with fluoride in them. But what happens if you don't have the money to buy vitamins? What happens if you
Or you
can't
forget
afford to
your
do it?
vitamins. You're just like,
So
okay,
so
I didn't
or
do
you
it.
forget them. But and it's a tax again on poor people because some rich dude who probably has given whose kids grew up with fluoride in their water, and he is deciding that you don't need it anymore, and he doesn't care about the impacts that it actually has on real people and their
So let's add in
lives.
a data point here, Jamal. The impact is, if you don't have fluoride in water in childhood, then your chance of needing antibiotics to treat gum disease and other health issues goes up by 600%.
Wow.
You're literally going to end up having to see the doctor or go to the ER and find more problems that you have to pay for antibiotics for your children simply because you decided not to have fluoride in your water.
Yeah. I mean, so this is the thing about here. I'm gonna tie the bow on this. It's careless,
Mhm.
it's irresponsible, and so when you have these guys communicating on an encrypted app, but not one that's secure about government,
Mhm.
about war plans, battle plans, and using emoji like they're a bunch of teenagers, talking about what just happened in the NCAA game. So you have that happening in the battle space. You have the disruption to vaccines and to vitamins that can actually help people stay healthy in the healthcare space. You have the making up formulas to just decide off the top of your head how to put tariffs on other countries, which is throwing the markets for a loop and sending all your allies scurrying for cover in the economic space. How are we supposed to believe that any of these things are thoughtful or could
Mhm.
matter, or why we should trust these guys to figure it out just because Emperor Trump has decided that these are the things that Americans ought to be for?
Mhm. Yeah, they want to
It's irresponsible and careless.
they want to reshape America in an old image that none of us recognize right now, and they convince people, enough people, to just trust them to do it. And a lot of those people are finding out right now that they are also part of the reshaping, that they also can be discarded, right? DEI, the number one DEI program in federal government, veterans hires. They're going to be
Right.
trimming down the Veterans Affairs. That's 30%, at least minimum 30%. They said that's all veterans who've been working there, right? It's going to. This is all
Well,
people are going to realize very quickly.
so
Not quick
you
enough,
just
but
you're kind of circling the DEI since we got a couple of minutes. I do think we were going to stay out of immigration for now, but I do think we should touch on it because I think this is the thread. Is uh, the Supreme Court just said that they were not going to stop Trump, make Trump
Mhm.
bring back the uh, where's the gentleman from who is in the prison who
the
shouldn't be
guy
there?
the guy from Maryland who had
It's
protected
from
status
Maryland,
in
exactly.
Maryland, who got picked up and deported without any proof or evidence provided against him, and right.
Yep,
He
yep,
had lawyers. They walked in. They
yep.
said, "Why? How? Come on, what's going on?" The Trump administration said, "Oh, this is last week. Well, we can't bring him back because now he's in El Salvador prison, and we have a deal with El Salvador that we give them money and they put people in jail for us. So sorry, we can't do anything." And even the Trump administration's lawyer said, "Yeah, we shouldn't have deported him. We don't really have a legal basis, but we can't do anything." You know what they do? They fired that lawyer.
I was gonna say
They
they got rid of the
fired
lawyer.
they fired the lawyer who admitted legal reality and was trying to still do the tap dance from it. They fired him. They said he had not accurately represented Trump's perspective and he wasn't loyal. They got rid of him. And so the appeals court said, "Nah, this judge is right. The judge said that this is absolutely
So
unlawful."
so
And then
when the right before our guest comes, so when the Supreme Court jumps in and the Supreme Court basically stops that, everybody, they go along with it except for who? The women.
Mhm.
Right. So everyone sort of posed this like the liberal judges plus Amy Coney Barrett. It turns out Amy Coney Barrett, who is a Donald Trump appointee, right, has become increasingly suspicious and skeptical is a better word, skeptical of a lot of these Trump rules. And so when we saw the 5-4 decision by the courts about this case that Nayyera was just talking about, um, it was the four justices that stood up, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, and now Amy Coney Barrett, who stood up. It was the four women on the court who said, "I don't think this is like we got to do better than this." I think that
Mhm.
this is an emerging in Georgia. Be four women plus
Mhm.
whatever one of those guys they can
Mhm.
get to go along with them.
It'll
Could be
probably be
Kavanaugh,
Roberts
could be
at some point.
Roberts.
Yeah, it probably would be
They're the
Roberts at
only
some point.
ones who
But
could do it.
as we're sitting here discussing and trying to battle over when rule of law may or may not prevail, and what is the exact point of constitutional crisis? Everybody wants it to be later, but it might be in front of us right now. Want to bring in our special guest, Don Graves, who most recently served as Deputy Secretary of Commerce, but he is an economic expert. He knows how to explain and engage with people. He's helped both Jamal and myself understand a lot more about how government services people through working with the economy. Don, welcome.
Hello, it's so good to be with you.
Hey Don, it's good to see you. I know you're now, since you left the Commerce Department, you also now are a fellow over at Georgetown. And tell us what is going on. How are you enjoying your post-administration life? Have you like reconnected to all the important things? What's going on with
Well, I'm getting there. This is it actually has been great to get back to my law school alma mater uh, at the Institute of Politics and Public Service at Georgetown. Spending time with students is, I think, one of the great things that any one of us can do at points in our life is to get to reconnect with young people, refresh, look at things the way that they look at things. They don't have preconceived notions. They don't have the biases that we do, and they're certainly not as cynical as many of us are. So it's been really great to refresh and do that and get out and enjoy nature a little bit.
it? So
I have the same
In honor of
experience.
Don, go ahead, Nair.
I have the same experience of Don that Don's talking about, which is realizing that my undergraduate students don't remember Obama. That's just not,
That's
they know
exactly right.
Trump, Biden, and now another Trump, and they just have so many questions that are rooted in first principles. And it's sometimes sad to have to tell them what reality is, but also hopeful because they do really care. And so I'm really glad that you're in a similar space right now.
No, it's been great. And the students, and it's the young people. They
Right, get it right,
they,
get it right.
they look at it completely differently, as you suggest. And I think that because of that, they are willing to think in more sort of revolutionary ways and saying, why do we do it a certain way
Hmm.
when the three of us certainly have been taught, well, you have to do it this way. That's the way it's done. They say, why? There's no reason for that. Let's try this other approach, which I think is really great and refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're having that experience. One of the things that we want to talk to you about today is, as we're evaluating what's happening with Donald Trump right now, stock markets are going crazy. I was just saw a number today that the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, their small business optimism index has gone down for the third month in a row, and it's gone down the most since 2022. People, small business owners who are, the lifeblood of the economy, don't feel confident about what's happening. So we just love to get your take on what's happened over the last days and what this really means to the world and the economy.
I think that indicator from NFIB is something that shows generally the mood of the public, the direction that that people feel the country has taken, and just the first 90 days or maybe less of this administration. You see it in the CEO indexes. They feel very strongly that we're headed in the wrong direction. You see it in consumer sentiment index out of Michigan, that people are feeling down on the economy. They're feeling down on the direction of the country. And, it's certainly the latest actions by this administration are certainly playing out in markets and in trade all across the globe. I think the Dow has been a little bit volatile today. I haven't checked it recently, but it's been up and down. But the last 4 or 5 days, it has been trending significantly down. So people are not feeling good. They feel like the president promised them something like lower prices that he's not actually focused on. And I think that's a real problem for consumers. It's certainly a real problem for the average American who is just trying to get by and feels like they were sold a bill of goods by the guy who swept into the White House and is not really focused on them. So it's unfortunate, but it's a reality we're facing.
I love your use of bill of goods because that's very much a customs and tariff term, right? That it's something, an item
Exactly.
comes across the border and there's a bill of goods that goes with it. How long before we start to see the impact of these tariffs, which are universal? It's not like there's any country that's exempt. The penguins up north are not even exempt from this. So every aspect of our economy, when are we going to start feeling it?
Well, it's interesting because I saw just on Friday when the jobs numbers came out. The president's director of National Economic Council suggested, oh, well, the numbers were much better than what folks had been predicting, all the dire warnings. But I think any of us who paid attention to jobs numbers know that they're actually a lagging indicator, that the positive attributes are actually attributed to what came out of the growing economy that President Biden and Vice President Harris delivered to the United States, an economy that was growing, that growth was stable and strong, where inflation numbers were coming down close to, by the end of the administration, to the point to the target rate that the Fed had indicated that they were going to start bringing down interest rates. So all of those things are still playing out. But to your question, I think what we're going to see is in maybe a month or two, it takes a little while for things to unwind. And a lot of the companies that had planned ahead, saw that tariffs were coming, they bought a bunch of the goods that they needed. They stocked up as much as they could. In fact, we saw as early as last winter in December after the election, a number of businesses said they weren't going to be paying out bonuses at the beginning of the year to their employees because they needed to use that money to stock up on the goods that they needed to produce whatever products they had. So I think it's going to take another month or two, but it's clear if the market is certainly any indication and CEO sentiment that most of the country will start to feel it. You'll start to see contraction in the job market. in significant numbers. You'll see folks who are not willing to spend money, and because we are an economy that is driven by consumer spending, it's going to have this, unfortunately, this cyclical effect, and I think the economy will really start to feel pain, certainly by late spring and early summer.
Yeah, you can already start to see some of the effect of that, and you hear about it. People who thought they were going to get jobs and the jobs were chilled, or the job they told them to hold on, they're not going to get hired right now. As you said, bonuses that were withheld or were much smaller than they were supposed to be, and people count on those bonuses in many places for a bunch of their income. And then you start to see. As you said, spending is taking a backseat. We also have got consumer debt that's high. So if people start to not get jobs, not get raises, they've got more debt to service. That's a really that's a really bad place for us to be as an economy. So I want to get back to what this means. You and I spent a lot of time when I was in government, on airplanes, flying around the world, flying around the country, looking at like these local markets and what was happening with small business owners and what was happening with people who wanted to, spend some infrastructure dollars. Do you see in the current Trump administration them chilling that kind of optimism on the ground that people had, that maybe they were going to be able to build better lives for themselves? Or are they continuing some of those programs that you were working on when you were in government?
Well, it's clear that that this administration, from day one, especially with Elon Musk and the Doge team, that they didn't believe in the programs that we had established that were producing real results for Americans of all stripes in every corner of the country. So this administration has eliminated, even if where they have not eliminated the programs outright, which they have done in significant ways across the federal government, they have laid off or forced out the very folks who actually drive these programs, not just the social safety net programs, not just the programs that are built to help the lowest income families in this country, but the very programs that help sustain our small businesses, for instance, the programs that are in place to make sure that the people who fought for our country and may have sustained injuries through Veterans Affairs, all these programs that are built to drive economic growth and to support individuals in various ways, this administration is pulling back from that. So I think that what you're going to find is that federal government, as the year goes on, the federal government certainly won't be able to support those companies in ways that they had before, in things like trade, in things like investment. You'll also see that individuals and families that rely on the services of the federal government are going to have much more difficulty accessing those resources in significant ways. And I think so far the government has been somewhat resilient, but we just saw that the Supreme Court blocked 16,000 critically important federal workers from coming back into the workforce. These were the folks, the probationary workers. It's not probationary that they were in trouble or anything. It's that they had transitioned, they had maybe promoted to a different job in recent years, or they were hired to implement these very programs, like the CHIPS program, like the programs to drive EV production, to drive manufacturing all across the country. Those folks are now back to being laid off, and so these programs are going to start to fail all across the country.
Which is part of the intent, right, is to continue to point to government as a failing institution, that government doesn't work. But when you hear the current Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, say things like, my mother-in-law, she misses her Social Security check. She's not going to call. Only the people who are grifters and, trying to game the system, only they're the ones who are going to be using the phone. So, and that was all a justification to take down websites and fire IT staff, because he's saying, like, right, you don't need people. No one's going to really need the help of Social Security to process or understand what's going on with their benefits. What's your reaction?
It just shows how out of touch the president and his administration, especially his senior leaders, are from the daily lives of Americans. The fact that he would suggest that an American who's relying on a Social Security check, who may have a very limited pension, that they could get by for a month or 2 months if they didn't get their check. That just shows that he is part of the elite and doesn't get what regular Americans see from day to day, from week to week. We know that people are in many communities, in many places in this country, are sort of getting by week to week, paycheck to paycheck. It's been that way for a long time. That's why President Biden and Vice President Harris were so focused on making sure that we were creating more opportunities and more support for people of less means, people of lower income. We were creating job pathways. We were creating more opportunities in the types of industries that would create meaningful jobs for the long run, not just going back to the jobs of the past, which it seems like this president and especially the current Secretary of Commerce are focused on. They seem to think that American beef and the producing the Edsel are the way that we should be going. And when beautiful beef, and the Edsel may have been a interesting idea. That's not the direction the country needs to go. Of course, those of us who might eat meat, yeah, we want American meat sold across the globe, but we also want good meat from abroad. That's the flow of trade, and we definitely want the best cars produced in this country, or the best manufactured goods, but up the manufacturing scale, not back to the types of things that actually aren't competitive with the Chinese, let alone the Europeans. So
Don't
they're
forget
just out
cheap.
of touch.
People want cheap. People want cheap.
Don, that's where I want to check in with you now. I worked at the Commerce Department many years ago, but one of the things about commerce I think people don't often appreciate is the folks at Commerce's staff there are they're commercial diplomats, right? Like they're going around the world, they're engaging with countries. They know exactly if you go to the U.S. Embassy office, a foreign commercial service officer will meet you and tell you, here are the things people buy in this country. Here are the things you got to do in order to meet the qualifications to sell in this country. Here are the things that people you got to know inside the government. They'll lay it out for you about how to export your goods, how to make it work. One of the things that's disturbing to me about watching Trump is the soft power that so many of us believe was so important about America having being so important around the world. It wasn't just our military. It wasn't just our economic might. It was the fact that people love blue jeans, they love movies, and they wanted to eat McDonald's and all that stuff. And now what we've seen is all this foreign direct investment that's come to the United States of people who wanted to buy things here, buy residencies here. They see America as a refuge and a safe place. We were a partner to the world. I just want to tap into your sort of commercial diplomat hat for a second and talk to us about how the Trump approach to kind of global economics might be impacting America's bonds with allies and people who are considering whether or not they ought to be our allies.
You were exactly right. The thing that one of the things that made us a great country was that other countries relied upon us, and they knew, yeah, maybe American goods are slightly more expensive, but they're of higher quality, and they could trust us that when we said we were going to stick by a deal, we were going to stick by it. We'd stand by their side, and we'd be there when they needed us. You look at the U.S. economy over the last 20 years, almost 20 years, it's grown. It was about $14 trillion in 2007, 2008. You compare it to the Eurozone, and that was a little bit less, about $13 trillion. In that period of time, in just under 20 years, the U.S. economy has almost doubled. We're close to $28 trillion right now. And the Eurozone has grown by a couple $trillion. And that's because of things like the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, the folks that you talked about, Jamal, the folks who at the Commerce Department are our liaisons, the ones who build that trust with other countries, with certainly with the ministers, but even more importantly, building the trust and the partnership, laying the groundwork with other companies so that US companies can do deals in those countries and we can
Hmm.
sell to those markets. Well, we've just blown up that system. We've just eroded all of the trust that we had. You talk to leaders, and I've talked to a number of leaders, both government leaders, but also more importantly, the business leaders from other countries, and they say, "Don, we like you a lot, and we
Mm.
appreciate all you did, but we no longer trust that the United States is going to stick by its commitments. We no longer trust that you're good trading partners. And until you actually show us that you mean it, we're gonna go elsewhere to try to find ways to trade. Yeah, we'll do some deals, but we're gonna trust but verify, as Reagan said. We're going to trust and but verify everything going forward because we just don't believe you anymore with this guy in the White House."
That goes back to, right, Trump won, Biden in between, and then this idea that European countries and other allies were trying to Trump-proof. Like, oh, all right, well, the guy pulled out of deals before. He's going to do the same thing all over again this time, right? Fool me once, shame on me. They're trying not to be fooled this time. One of my favorite examples, though, of how trade has impacted daily life. I don't know, any of your kids obsessed with tangerines? Like they're just like, the big bags that you get. That's
Oh yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah. The
from a
little
project
oranges. Right.
from Pakistan with an agricultural university in Nebraska in the 1970s. It's actually an indigenous strain to Pakistan, and that was what part of what was transferred and traded. And now, right, it's something that all of us who need to keep a horde of preschoolers satisfied. It's like, here, just throw out a bunch of little
Exactly.
ball-sized oranges. But there's so much that we gain from these global connections, and the Trump administration is taking advantage of our fear of these global connections. Wanted to ask you in that spirit about agriculture and our ability to feed ourselves, because that's been a huge benefit for
Mhm.
America, is that we've been able to
Mhm.
feed ourselves and in fact have surplus. Other countries go to war to try and get access to things like grain or poultry. Where are we headed on the being able to sustain American appetites?
Well, it is a huge problem ahead for a few different reasons. First off, like the trade in agricultural goods is critically important to the country, especially to American farmers. But the American diet and American tastes aren't all about American grain, and the corn that we grow in my home state of Ohio and across other parts of the Midwest, or the potatoes that you get from Idaho. We get things. Everyone loves. We just had March Madness. Everyone loves to have the guacamole at the party when you're watching the games. You want to have your chips and guacamole. Well, where are avocados grown by and large? Mainly in Mexico. They're not produced in large quantities in this country, except in a few places. Well, if we have massive tariffs, that's going to be really costly to the American people to eat the types of things that they're used to having. So expect that costs are going to go up for the average consumer on a whole range of goods that they never realized weren't actually produced here. The other thing, and it goes back to where I started, the American farmer sells sells all over the world. We are critically important to our partners and allies, and to countries, especially in the developing world, that need our goods. That's going to have not just a direct impact on their ability to get those products, things like grains, and cheap enough that they could actually afford it in other parts of the world, but just as importantly, it means that U.S. farmers are going to start to feel the pain. We've seen that Nebraska farmers are starting to have real problems because they don't have places to sell their goods. USAID was a big purchaser of American agricultural goods, and then would um, provide those to other countries as part of our soft power that, Jamal, you were talking about. So farmers are going to have real issues. I think the state of Nebraska already is expecting that it's going to have financial issues. It may be insolvent at some point in the next few quarters because those farmers are not paying the taxes on the things that they're selling because they're not selling anything anymore. So, we may be back to days of eating the types of food that folks don't really want anymore because that's the only thing that we can get. It's going to be a real problem for, I think, all Americans, but especially for the small and mid-sized farmers who we're just getting by to begin with.
All right. Well, Don, I appreciate you being here. We both appreciate you being here. I'd like to, if you've got anything, do you think if Trump, if Democrats win the House back or something and Trump goes away in 2 years because he's supposed to, do we have a chance to rebuild these ties and to make this work? What do you see as the future for us on this?
I mean, the good thing is that we have spent the last 100 years or so building up relationships with, certainly since World War II, we've built up relationships with folks far and wide. We've used our soft power very effectively because we've been gracious. We come to people's aid when they need it, at least up until now. And so people have long memories. So I think that we will have the opportunity to rebuild those connections and get countries to believe in us again. I don't think, however, that we will be in a place, if we don't act very quickly, where the U.S. is seen as the center of the global economy. I think there were many economies and powers who were already looking at creating a non-U.S. centered set of economies and markets. The non-aligned countries like China, to some extent India and Brazil and South Africa, they were building markets without us and economies that didn't rely on us. I think now we're forcing our partners and allies to move away from us. So that is going to be something that I think our kids and our grandkids are going to be really dealing with. And we may never get to the place after this administration, if we don't put a halt to it right away, that where the U.S. is at the center of the world economic order, the way that it has been certainly over the last 75 years or so.
Well, that's
Grace,
certainly an
thank you.
note.
Roll the ball down for our kids and grandkids, our students in this case. Yeah. Don, thank you so much for joining us today. Always good to hear from a friend, but an expert, and glad to see that you're still in the game and trying to make sure that our listeners and students and everybody else understands really what's at stake with how we're working with our government right now. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks. And thanks for what you guys are doing. This, your show is actually critically important at helping the American people really understand what's happening in Washington, but more importantly, how it's affecting their daily lives. And I think that, Jamal, you and I talked about this. That's the problem the Democrats have had, is not connecting what's actually happening in Washington with people's daily lives. So thank you for what you're doing.
Here we thought we were just doing therapy every week, Jamal. Apparently we're doing a public service. How about that?
Wow, we might actually make a difference. Thanks, Don.